When we talk about persuasion, it's always vitally important to talk about Aristotle and Aristotle's logos, ethos, and pathos. We like to think of those as a three-legged stool for persuasion. If your logos is strong, your ethos is strong, and your pathos is strong, your stool is going to be steady and firm. If one of those isn't as strong, the stool wobbles and it's not as comfortable for sitting on, and sometimes it even falls over. So let's start by looking at logos. Logos is simply logical appeals. Logical appeals are appeals that argue on the basis of logic, supported by reliable facts and evidence. When we use logical appeals, there's three basic ways to do so. The first is by specific instances. This is where you use specific examples to make a conclusion about the whole. And so you use several specific examples to draw a conclusion. It allows for developing a general principle or a general conclusion, but it does not and cannot relate to the whole. And so anytime we use specific instances, we have to be careful to make sure that we're not trying to say these specific instances that we're using as examples can be a conclusion for the whole group that we're looking at. When you do specific instances, you want to make sure that you use enough specific instances to give examples. If two students had a great advising experience, we can't say that all college students have a great advising experience because two is not enough specific instances to go by. And so when we look at the sample size that we're using, we want to make sure that we're using enough to verify and to help support the conclusions that we're making. A second way of doing it is by causes and effect. With cause and effect, you can start with the cause and then tell us what the effect is. Or you can start with the effect and try to figure out what caused it. To establish a cause and effect connection, you must prove that the possible causes, other than the ones you are addressing, are not producing the effect that's there. You also want to try to prove the causation that occurs between the two things. The last type is reasoning by sign. When we reason by sign, we draw a conclusion on the basis of the presence of clues or symptoms that frequently occur together. And so if you wake up in the morning and you look out your window and the sky's all gray and cloudy and you might hear thunder in the distance, you're probably going to take an umbrella or raincoat or wear boots, not flip-flop weather. That's reasoning by sign. You look at the signs in the sky, the signs that you hear, and as a result, you make a conclusion that an umbrella will be handy today. We also do it by medical diagnosis. We look at the signs or the symptoms to make a decision. And that's why the number of signs that are present help us make a conclusion about the reasoning that's there. When we engage in logical reasoning, we have to be careful because in persuasion, there are lots of fallacies that can occur. A fallacy is a persuasive tactic that feels like a real argument. Sometimes it sounds really, really good, but it doesn't involve logical reasoning. And it's actually logically unsound and misleading. So it sounds good, it may look good, but when you actually examine it and analyze it, it's not a sound argument. And so we as speakers need to avoid these fallacies when we speak because we want to be credible for our audience. And if our audience listens to our presentation and says, that doesn't make sense, they're not going to believe everything that we said. Some logical fallacies that I want you to know about are appealing to authority as proof. This is passing someone off as an authority when actually the person has little expertise, knowledge, or even experience. You may think of it as my friend said, or my uncle said, or my mama knows. Well, this is great that your friend, your uncle, and my mama know something, but are they truly an expert? Do they have the knowledge in that field? Or are we just listening to the people who are around us? Another example as authority as proof is when we say experts say. Well, what experts? Who are they? Where are they an expert? And what are they doing? We need to give our audience this information so that they can see that the experts that we are using are actually authorities on what we're speaking on. Another fallacy that I'm sure you've heard of is the bandwagon fallacy. The bandwagon fallacy appeals to numbers as proof. everybody's doing it, so you should too. Or, as possibly happened in middle school or high school, Mom, Dad, everybody's gonna be there. And they probably said something like this to you: not everybody. The bandwagon fallacy says that everyone's doing it, so you should too. Ideas and truth aren't rooted in popularity. And so just because a lot of people are doing it is not logical proof that everyone should. The last logical fallacy that we're going to discuss today is the slippery slope. The slippery slope says that one event will lead to another event that leads to another event that is undesirable. When we see this, we realize that this one event isn't going to automatically lead to the second event. For example, you may have been told at one point in your life, drinking one sip of alcohol will lead you becoming an alcoholic. Now, some people can't take a sip of alcohol and maintain control, and some people, when they drink alcohol, it does lead to them being an alcoholic. But drinking one sip of alcohol doesn't automatically mean that you're going to become an alcoholic. And so we have to be careful with our arguments, because if our audience sees through our reasoning and judges it to be false, it's very, very hard to persuade them or even convince them to keep listening.